Where did these voices come from? Who told me this? And why do I believe these ideas if they don't serve me? Because if you look at each one of them, you're going to realize these voices are many times from mom, dad, aunt, uncles, limiting beliefs, what they told us, what they believed to be true 50 years ago, 20 years ago. These aren't even my ideas. Would you rather be safe or free? If you want to be free, there is a way, but we have to realize and begin to work on these internal narratives and remove our identity from my stress, my trauma, my shame, because most people are holding on and have taken ownership of things that do not belong to them. Your shame does not belong to you. It's not a clothing item. It's not a car. It's something that happened, and it is how you feel based on what happened at that time or how it's impacted you since then. Once you turn that psychological light switch on, it can never be turned off, and you're gonna see everything good, bad, or indifferent. And now the only thing you have to do is face it and saying anything that doesn't serve me is not me.
Welcome to I'm Up, He Sees Me, I'm Down, the show where we explore the real stories of resilience, faith, and leadership from the battlefield to the boardroom and beyond. This show is proudly sponsored by Project Icon, helping leaders rise with purpose and integrity. I'm your host, Mike Turner, and I'm honored to have you with us today. Let's dive into the conversation.
Here we go. Here we go. Motivated. 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 Shoot shot. Shoot shot. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another wonderful episode of I'm Up, He Sees Me, I'm Down. I'm your host, Mike Turner, and today's guest is William Deck, the executive transformation coach behind MindBusiness LLC and the creator of the Presence Over Performance system. He's helped more than 800 high-performing leaders drop the mask, overcome imposter syndrome, and lead with real authenticity. William blends mindset work, identity architecture, and faith-driven clarity to shift leaders from burnout to true alignment. He also teaches mental fitness at the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and is becoming a powerful voice in modern executive leadership. Thank you for joining us, William. I'm so glad to have you on here and kind of talk through what you're doing for others.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and to have this conversation because I think it's so important. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So let's just dive into it a little bit. I always like to talk to my guests about how you got started. You know, what was that piece that said, "Hey, I need to shift gears, or I need to do something different," or even, you know, whatever it is that just kind of got you started.
Yeah, so I would say for me, you know, where things really started as far as this executive coaching journey is for me, just as a leader, you know, throughout my years in corporate, it was really hard for me to find a place to rest my head. Either I was the one that was leading everyone and had, you know, the perspective or the position to support others, or I was looking for mentorship and support. And I just was never able to really latch on to that mentor, the leader. And so it left me feeling like I was kind of on an island. And during my career, you know, what really kind of sparked it for me started at the very beginning of my, you know, professional career. You know, growing up, I was the oldest boy in the house. So yes, being an older child, I absolutely had opportunities to lead my younger siblings. But in the creative space, it was really more about whether it was the team that I was leading or my upline, so my senior leaders. I always found myself having conversations with them about, you know, what they were going through in their own personal lives. And we were just able to make personal connections that I found myself giving them advice and perspective on. And this started when I was in my mid-20s, and I just was like, wow, like I was able to give them insight and they was telling me thank you. That was kind of hard to comprehend, but it was a sign. And I picked up on that pattern. As my career progressed, I just found myself in those types of situations more. But one conversation with a particular leader who was a hospital administrator when I was in healthcare, it really took this to the next level. And ultimately, in that conversation with this hospital leader, we were meeting to kind of go over data and our next steps for a particular project. But I asked him one question twice, and it changed everything for me. And it really brought this idea alive.
Okay.
I asked how are you doing? And then he talked about all the corporate, mumbo jumbo and all the things and all the outcomes. But something just led me to ask him the same question again. And I was like, I appreciate that, Mark, but how are you doing? And when I asked him the second time, his shoulders dropped, his head dropped, and tears began to stream down his face. And I was like, okay, what did I do? Am I about to get fired? I've asked the wrong question. But come to find out, his mother had just passed away like a week prior, and no one knew about it. I mean, he was like the second in charge at the hospital, jovial, funny, and externally he looked totally fine, but he was shattered on the inside, and he was afraid to share that with other people. And that not only caused him and I to have a closer relationship, it really sparked something within me to make sure I always ask that question with whomever I'm connecting with. Right.
I love that. I love that because, I always tell this to guests, and my audience knows this, that one of the things when I was in executive leadership, one of the first things I would do was come up with I can't take credit for this. It's the 5 voices, right? But part of it is that peace index. If you've ever used the peace index or heard of it, I was like, that's one of my first things out the door as I train my staff. I was like, do you guys know what the peace index is? No? Okay. And so I'd have a couple sessions with them just to kind of really get them to go. And so I quit asking them, how you doing? I started asking them, what's your peace index? And, and hopefully that gets out more on this podcast and people start going, oh, peace index. And, and they'll look it up and stuff. But man, it really did change the culture when I started that one little simple thing is just when I have a one-to-one with somebody, or if I'm just standing there, I'm like, hey man, what's your peace index? And they would go, oh, it's about a 7, about an 8. I'm like, oh, you're doing great, because that means your finances are in order. Your corporate career's in line, your family, your health, it's all added together, and that's your average. And then, oh man, whenever I had one incident where I was like, he was down like a 6 or whatever, and come to find out his peace index was a 6 because he was, going through some health issues and stuff. And so I don't think I would have necessarily got that out of him in a very, it would have caused probably a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks down the road, I would have got it out of him because it's just how I'm built. But man, I love that you asked that same question a second time just to get out of him what was really going on. And it was, and the other side of that is you were being nudged to do that, right? You were being like, get that out of me. You need to ask him again. And we need to listen to that voice, listen to that nudge. So I love that. So that was awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, yes. I mean, for me, faith is everything. And I've always had this sixth sense of just being able to pick up on what people were thinking or feeling without having to ask questions, meaning, just that sixth sense of, just, and I don't know if you want to call it clairvoyance or whatever else. I don't know the proper term. All I can say is
it's a gifting. It's a gifting. We'll call it a gifting for sure.
A gifting. Yep. I mean, just to be able to read people. I use it really well. Just growing up. But at the same time, in my corporate career, what it allowed me to do is just to be able to uncover some of the unspoken things, right? And so that has allowed me to be a great leader. And it used to be kind of a burden because you kind of feel other people are feeling, the empathy and all that stuff. But I found that it's really a superpower because what it's allowed me to do is to be able to navigate with wisdom. And so, and so really in my corporate career, after that conversation, I always made sure I did that. But what really kind of took it to the next level is work that I had the opportunity to do in workforce development. And from 2018 to 2020, I was a program director for a workforce development firm that was training adult leaders to transition from, hourly, just regular factory work or whatnot to having a career in technology. And so I was not the technology person, but I was helping to oversee the program, day-to-day operations, corporate partnerships, all that. And in our first cohort in early 2018, we always had 20 to start our cohort. But within a couple of days of that first cohort, 2 people quit and just MIA'd. And after getting feedback from a couple of them, as well as talking to the staff, I quickly realized, you know what? They quit because they did not believe that they deserved to be here. They didn't deserve that they were worthy of what this outcome was going to be, which was double, tripling your salary, having a career in retirement, and elevating your family. And that's what they told me that they wanted, and all of us that they wanted in the interviews, several rounds of interviews, and they still self-sabotaged. And so from there, I had to create some content around, like, how can I begin to explain some of these things about, overcoming imposter syndrome and building authentic confidence and all this. As the issues came up, I just created more content to make for the next cycle, I could have something formal to discuss.
Yeah.
And I realized, hey, this is something that I love more than, anything else, which is helping people, have a shift in their lives that changes everything for them. And they begin to double down on themselves and believe that they deserve the best that this life has to offer. And by 2020, I was in, or late 2020, I was not only in a new role, but we had launched our company now, MindBusiness, and I began to take on executive coaching clients because I realized, once again, in my corporate career, from the top of the leadership chain all the way down to those who are trying to get through the door, we are facing a lot of the same internal voices, but from different perspectives. And how
that's so good, man. That is so good. That's so true. Absolutely. Because, I don't know how many people they come with different names for everything, right? But the end is that you're driving into work and you're commuting or whatever, and you hear, man, I don't know why you even go here, why you do this, just all those negative thoughts and everything coming from different ways. But man, that is so true that people are hearing it differently, but we're all hearing it. So.
Yep. Because the same voices that are telling a CEO that he's an imposter or she's an imposter and they got lucky, were the same voices talking to those interns saying, you're an imposter, you don't deserve to be here. How could you come in here and in 4 months have a job paying you $80,000 and working in Northwestern Mutual? Get out of here.
Yep.
And some of them listened to it. Others fought back and they saw the other side. And I think the most important thing that we can learn in life, when we face challenges, we have to not only think or hope, but to know that there is another side to this. It's not always going to be this way. The other side is a place, and it is an inevitable reality and outcome for you if you don't quit. But the mental and emotional part is where people get tied up. And so that's the battlefield of the mind. And so as opposed to trying to come in and say, hey, let's keep on fighting and saying, wait a minute, let's just realize that these internal voices that you're fighting against are not you. And most of us have attached our identity to character attributes and mistakes and faults and shame and pain. And they say, well, this is my pain. This is my situation. This is what I've been through. This is what I did. And the enemy can only use the ammunition that we give him.
Right.
The devil is not a creator. So because he's not a creator, he can only cleverly use the unhealed areas of our lives as ammunition against us. Or as it talks about in the Bible, just with Job, when Satan came into the inner courts of heaven, and people are like, well, why was Satan there? Well, he was there because he's always trying to show up in the not in heaven, but in the courts of heaven, right? In the eternal damnation or eternal salvation void, right? That there's somewhere in between that it's like, okay, they did this, they did that. They keep on doing this in secret. They deserve to die. But guess what? For all of us who have, especially and I'm a Christian, for all of us who have accepted Christ, the one thing that Satan knows, but he keeps on trying, is that the blood covered all of that. Right. And so it's a beautiful thing to know from a spiritual perspective, hey, I don't have to be defined by my past, but every human needs to understand that no matter what they believe from a faith perspective, that I am not what I've been through. I am not my mistakes. I am the eternal, invisible I am that says good morning every single time I say hello to my wife or vice versa. That is who I am. And if ever been to a funeral, which at our age, we've been to multiple, when we look in the casket, they don't even look the same because they are no longer there.
Right. Yep.
So this body, this shell is only a glimpse of the future glory. And from a faith perspective, that anchors us. But even some of my clients who don't necessarily have a strong faith base, it's a conversation that I've just decided I'm going to have with them anyway. I don't have to convince them of what their faith belief is, but they have to know that there's something beyond what they've been through, what they experienced, and what they know. Because if that's all that there is, then where's the hope? How can there be different from what's already been if there is nothing new that can come in and supersede all of that.
Great so far, man. That's some rich stuff right there. I love that. That's really good. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is that nudge in your heart. So how do you help those in leadership roles really dial into that and really help them figure out that nudge or that spoken word that they've been looking for to help guide them?
Yeah, I would say really when it comes to just that nudge in our hearts, really, from a faith perspective, that's the Holy Spirit, right?
Right.
But when it comes to the practical everyday, that is the idea, the reality of authenticity. God made us unique, and who we are and what we have to say is not only valuable, but it's important and necessary to add color and light to this world. And so when I'm working with leaders, the authenticity piece is so key for them because most of us have the voices of other people and their expectations in our head. And so we show up to work every single day with a corporate and social mask, no matter what our titles are. And we are saying and behaving and thinking like we think other people want us to, as opposed to saying, what are my thoughts? How do I feel? And so in order to be able to kind of break through that veil, part of our coaching is really getting down to addressing 3 core life questions that everyone must answer for themselves in order to have an opportunity to find peace, rest, and good success, as the Bible talks about. And those questions are, who am I? Where am I? And what am I going to do next?
Mm.
Who am I as a human being? Beyond the titles, beyond all the stuff that I do or haven't done, or I'm an athlete or not an athlete, beyond all that, who am I? Number 2 is where am I? Where am I mentally and emotionally? And what is keeping me from taking that next step forward with confidence and faith? And then what am I going to do next is, okay, not only what is the plan, but as a person of faith, especially, I need to get some strategy that is divine, that goes beyond any system or process that I can create. Because if I take the old mind and the old heart into a new opportunity, it's going to produce the same results. And so we can find all the best practices within an organization, with a person one-on-one as far as coaching methodologies. But at the same time, if who you are in default mode at the subconscious level is the same internal narrative and voices, nothing's going to actually have a transformational impact. And so we have to begin to answer questions for ourselves and stop letting the world give us the beat to our drum. From that point,
so let's dive into that a little bit, because I think that's an important part for my audience to really gather is what is your presence over performance system? I mean, what actually happens in those 6 weeks?
Yes. So the presence over performance system starts with what we call our I create framework. So I stands for identification. We need to identify those negative internal narratives that are ultimately leading and guiding our life, causing us fear and telling us we're not doing enough, we aren't enough, we don't have enough, we don't deserve it, right? What are people thinking of me? All these internal conversations that show up in our thought patterns, in our emotional response systems, or our emotional patterns in response to stress, as well as our behaviors. So once we understand that these patterns are led by negative accusing voices from the enemy that is giving us a false sense of self, then we have the opportunity to say, well, if that's not who I am, then who am I? So filling in that void with information, absolutely, if it's a person of faith, the word of God, but also some self-declarations and clarity that this is who I am and this is why I'm here on this earth. It's not to struggle, strive, and make money only. So once we can do that, then we take them through the rest of the process all the way down to the T in I create, which is transformation, which is ultimately helping to begin to hardwire new behaviors, new thought patterns, and new emotional response systems based on the time that we've taken together to architect that future vision of self that is not just ready for the next level in life, but they can begin to believe that all things are possible for me. Once we have an opportunity to do that on the early stages, now it's just about hardwiring new behaviors. And that's where, as a man thinketh in his heart, so as he comes alive. Or in science, it takes 21 days to begin to hardwire new behaviors within the psychology. So it is the same principles, but by taking them through a 6-week process to get the garbage out, to edit that negative code, that faulty code in our mental hardwiring, and put in some new upgraded software and code that allows us to be able to not only upgrade to the next level, but now we begin to become the conscious observers of our internal narratives, of our internal beliefs. And now, because we have a foundation of who we are, what we want, and why we want it, we can move and take steps forward in any level of life, and we will be able to take steps forward in faith and confidence, whether we're afraid or not.
Love it, man. That's, and it sounds exactly like the type of system that a leader that's struggling really needs to double down on. Like they probably tried everything else, right? They've read these books, they've done this, and now it's time to really take that next step. So why are high performing leaders so hard to coach?
Yeah. So I would say some of them are really hard to coach because they have been a high performing lone wolf for a long time. Most of them have overcome a lot, and they are where they are in their own mind based on their own efforts. They are where they are because they were smart, they worked hard, they were consistent, all the things that absolutely are foundational. However, they've gotten to the edge of their own abilities to perform. And some of them have gotten to the top of the hill, but they still are broken on the inside because they don't have peace. They have imbalance in their life. And so ultimately when it's hard to work with a leader, it's ultimately because they haven't accepted that they need information and insight outside of themselves. And obviously, before we can work together, my goal is not to convince them that I'm the best person to work with. It is saying we've talked about everything, but I'm hearing in the midst of all that you're tired, you're exhausted, you're frustrated, and you feel like you have to do everything on your own. How's it working for you?
Yeah. Oh man, that's great. So if a leader listening right now feels overwhelmed or out of alignment, what's the very first step you'd tell them to take? Right. The, the day that everybody realizes the superpower and the super being that they are, oh man, that is a day. I mean, I tell you, I've seen it firsthand. People start to wake up and realize I'm a much bigger than this body can hold. I'm much bigger than this world can hold. Boy, once we start realizing that and start putting that out there, it's game over. William, it was an honest to God pleasure having you on this show. I really love what you had to say and what you're doing out there. Let my audience know how the best way to get a hold of you, reach you, and best way to contact you. I didn't have that much hard time finding you for sure. I mean, I did. I was like, oh, okay, I didn't have your LinkedIn, but I was like, I'll look you up on LinkedIn. Oh, there you are. All right. So it was great. Your beard was a little bit bigger then, but you know, but
yeah,
but yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, because it said 800, but yeah, you know, and that's awesome. And my audience will really resonate with that. So please reach out to William if you're struggling in any way with that leadership styles and corporate. It's not making sense to you anymore. It's time to really get an expert involved and really put you through a 6-week course and help you out. I love it. I love it.